This film contains actual accounts and depictions of war. Some material may be graphic and not suitable for all audiences.
Time is 1951.
Hi, my name is Jessica Abel, wife of retired Sergeant John Abel, and this is Struggle Beyond the Decade, a docuseries chronicling the lives and experiences of a connected group of soldiers during the Iraq War and their experiences afterward. We hope that this series will inspire, educate, and create a dialogue between those who've endured the scourge of war and those who don't yet understand.
When conducting this project, I asked for volunteer participants. I knew in the beginning my plan was to select people that held different ranks and positions in the Army. This project is not about valor and ego. It's about change. Some of the people I knew and others that I really didn't know at all. The main idea of this project is about maintaining perspective. Oftentimes as individuals, our minds get caught in one direction. If I told a story like that, it would only tell from a single point of view. If I was going to be honest and trying to help find a solution to minimize veteran suicide, I was going to have to talk to those whom are struggling, those people who found strength in different support structures. Well, my next stop is Oklahoma and Chicago. This is a struggle beyond the decade.
So I was in Alpha Company in 3rd Platoon. Our platoon got attached to Bravo, and we went to RAMADI, and then our platoon got split in half. So 2 tanks went to 1st Platoon, and then we stayed with 3rd Platoon in Bravo, and they split the 2 platoons in half. I was all pumped to be a tanker, just qualify.
These guys needed a little bit of motivation, so this is Benny's Beverage Depot, the Costco for alcoholics.
Over there on the tank, and they go, that's nice. We're attached to 116 infantry. They put us in the back of a 113 and they drop us off, and I'm walking around with my 240 that I dismounted off the tank thinking, oh yeah, this is gonna be awesome. Heaviest thing I've ever carried in my life. I never carried that thing again. And we walk, we were walking around on on whatever our patrol mission was that night for freaking 8 hours, and it was like, well, the whole time growing up, it's all death before dismount. You don't get off your tank. First thing they do, very first mission, I'm off my freaking tank.
Every time I got off my tank, it changed my life. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Jonathan Hoekstra. Now see, Hoekstra, we was in Apache company together. We wasn't in the same platoon, we wasn't the same rank, but I couldn't wait to hang out with this dude.
Basically, when I got out of high school, I was working construction, wasn't really sure which route I wanted to go. Had a rain day from work one day, rented Black Hawk down, watched the movie, got up, and went right to the recruiter station afterwards and said, I want to jump out of helicopters and blow stuff up. Ended up on a tank because to get all the schools aligned to do the infantry ranger type of school with airborne, I would have had to wait for like 8-9 months. I didn't want to wait that long. I wanted to go. That was November 2002. And so what else can I do that's fun? I said, well, if you want to blow stuff up, you can get on a tank. So signed up right there that day at MEPS, and had to wait for the Christmas break through basic training to be over, and left second week of January down to Fort Knox.
Name's Shawn Winans. I was with Bravo Company 134 Armor. I joined the military in 2000, August of 2000. Everybody in my family pretty much was in the military or some form of civil service. My grandfather was on the 7th wave of Iwo Jima. He was a pharmacist mate. And my dad was a fireman. My other grandfather on his side was on Peleliu and quite a few other islands in the Pacific. So we had a lot of civil service. And basically, I either wanted to farm or I wanted to join the military. I didn't have a farm, so therefore that was what it was. I was going to join the military. I had two options. I either wanted to be in Blackhawks or in tanks. I had classes, so Blackhawks weren't an option. So that's pretty much that.
The OSIT training basically is your basic training and your AIT all rolled into one. So I had 16 weeks, I think it was, with the drill sergeant's tank school. Got out. My first duty station assigned was Fort Riley, so I got to go home for a week in between OSIT and Fort Riley in processed. It took about a week to get me in processed in at Fort Riley. And then Sergeant Truman from Alpha Company, 134 Armor, came down, picked me up, took me up, introduced me. Within a week, I had been introduced to my tank crew. We were out in the field qualifying our tanks. There was a few other tanks out there, tank crews that had not qualified already together as a tank crew. And it wasn't, more than a month or two after that, we were, maybe even less than that, we were out the door on our way to Kuwait, getting ready to go to Iraq. So my transition, I didn't really have a lot of garrison life experience while we were there. I was 19 at the time, so it was all new to me. Basically came out all pumped up from basic training, happy to be a soldier, got to get on a tank, got to shoot the tank at a gunnery right away, and then we were getting ready to go to war. So there wasn't a lot of that downtime of, playing war and practicing and training to go overseas. It was pretty much, I joined and I went.
All right, on your feet. Everybody get around. The commander's here. All right, come on. At ease. Hey, man.
Man, death must not be feared. Death in time comes to all men. Yes, every man is scared in his first battle. If he says he's not, he's a liar. Don't you guys think so? What? Nobody's listening to me? Hey,
You're the only one shaking in your boots over there, sir. Hey, son, get some tiger boots.
The real hero is the man who fights even though he is scared. Some men get over it. Some get over the fright in a minute. For some, it takes an hour. For some, it takes days. But a real man will never let his fear of death overpower his honor. His sense of duty to his country. And his innate manhood.
No, say, sir, you're gonna have chicks over there too. No,
Every single man plays a vital role. Don't ever let up. Don't ever think that your job is unimportant. Every man has a job to do, and he must do it.
One morning, at our morning formation, they told us that we were going down to do a big brigade formation. So we all marched down there as a platoon into the company into the battalion, lined up with the rest of the brigade. And Colonel Connor gave the warning order that we were going to Iraq.
I was at the formation that they had for the whole brigade. Went to a formation at the main flagpole there on the hill, and they called out units, and 234 was not called out. I said, okay. So basically, we're not going. I ended up going on leave. I had a whole bunch of acquired leave, so I went on it was about a week or something like that. We went motorcycle riding in Colorado. Came back and my first sergeant said, "Pack your stuff, you're headed out." I said, "Okay." And they needed an unqualified gunner to come over to Bravo for the deployment. So I was tapped and I went over about a month before we deployed. So it was a initiation of a month.
Mail call, get your IEDs here. Step right up, everybody. Mail call, step right up. IED here, got a couple of IEDs there. Step right up, everybody.
Johnson.
Get your mail call.
Hey, Sarge, you didn't see one for Hoekstra,
I didn't get one for you.
Yeah.
Mail
Hey,
call.
Sarge, can you tell me if you found one from Hoekstra?
No, nothing for you,
Not
Hoekstra.
again. Another week without an IED.
Hey, Mom Spaghetti, a picture of my daughter, too.
Everybody else has got an IED. No IED from me.
Hoekstra didn't get one again.
We all soon will be introduced to the #1 killer in Iraq, the improvised explosive device, or IED.
You know, we did a lot of different things. The one thing that sticks out to me the most was we did a class one morning on IEDs, the improvised explosive devices, and it was basically explained to us this was a new tactic that what they were calling at the time the Ba'athist loyalists were using as doing whatever they can to blow up vehicles. There wasn't a lot known about it. There wasn't a lot of training. When we went through our different training modules, you know, they had different training stations set up for weeks before we went. Our IED training was basically we lined up on a dismounted formation. We walked around the corner of a building in a motor pool that was empty. The motor pool was empty and there was a single box sitting out in the middle of the motor pool, and we were asked to identify where's the IED at. I was on point in that formation, in that group, and I just simply pointed at the box and said, "I think I see an IED in the middle of the motor pool," and we passed. That was pretty much the extent of our training on IEDs. When we moved out into Kuwait, I remember the plane ride. We all hopped on buses one day. Flew into, I believe we landed in Germany, flew from Germany into Kuwait City, then hopped on buses right away and then out into the middle of nowhere into the desert. I remember it was real hot. It was a small tent city. It wasn't a huge installation with a lot of soldiers on it. We got our vehicles there, I think a few weeks after. We went out and did some target shooting with the tanks. They had different gunning stations set up to make sure everybody was qualified on all the weapons that we had. One of the additional weapons I carried with me when I was in 3rd Platoon was a Mossberg shotgun. So I got to use the shotgun range. I never shot a shotgun before in my life. I actually had a little 14-inch barrel with a pistol grip on it. The first time I walked up, I stuck it out and fired, and the thing shot up and hit my Kevlar right square in the center, and then I realized the importance of wearing your Kevlar when firing a gun. And we were out there for a few weeks. And I remember we got the warning order that we were getting ready to go in country, and that they were going to split us up into 2 groups. Basically, the group that was going to go with the vehicles on the Hets to take the tanks up. And then there was going to be a second group of us that they were going to fly us on a C-130 into Baghdad, and then throw us on a Chinook from Baghdad and take us out to Ramadi. So our platoon, which stayed together, of the 16 of us, 8 of us went on the C-130. I remember flying in because all of a sudden they said hold on, and they did one of the combat landings where they almost go down and they kind of do a circle right over the airport land. We weren't in Baghdad very long, maybe a few days. And then we got back out to the airfield, got on a C-130, on a Chinook, and we flew the Chinook out to Ramadi. And the base at that time, I believe, was being secured by 3rd ACR. I think it was 3rd ACR that was out there. And there wasn't much to it. It was just basically an old military facility that the Republican Guard had been. And when we were flying in, I remember having, you know, all my bags. A lot of stuff was still packed on the tank that was traveling up, but I had my rifle, my pistol, And the Chinook pilot radioed back to his guys in the back to tell us that they weren't going to be able to land within the area, but they were going to try to drop us close. And so we ran off the back of the Chinook, and they basically said, well, if someone starts shooting at you, good luck. We didn't really know what we were supposed to be doing because we thought we were supposed to be getting brought to another base. And we got off. Chinook took off, and I remember looking around. There was just maybe 12 of us, and we didn't have maps. We didn't know where we were going to go, and we actually ran into some, I don't know, I think they were British soldiers or Russian soldiers, or there was some other country that was there in country that pointed us in the right direction. We trekked it about a mile, and we walked into what ended up turning into Camp Junction City.
In Ramadi, the enemy has been pressing a vicious and effective campaign against American attempts to reach out to Iraq, especially undermining public works projects and the government.
So Junction City was an old large military base, I believe, that used to be a Republican Guard. I'm not positive about that, but I'm pretty sure it was a Republican Guard base. But it was our brigade headquarters for all of our operations in the Al Anbar province. So we had our brigade headquarters there. We had 116 Infantry, who I had been attached to. That battalion, Infantry Battalion, was there. And I believe Charlie Company from 134 was on the other side of the base. You had the medics there. 155 Artillery was there. The combat engineers. So the rest of the brigade battalions and assets were all on there. On our little corner of the base where most of the smaller combat teams stayed. But the majority of the base was really, it seemed very garrison life compared to what you would expect in a war zone. Pulling onto that base, you could actually get speeding tickets. They had MPs on the base that would stop you and write you a speeding ticket if you were driving too fast.
Whoa! Whoa! We're off the tank, man!
Get back in the tank.
What for?
Because I said so. Oh, this is lame. Yeah? In the tank.
Why do we gotta ride in the tank? Why can't we take the stupid Humvee?
Because we're tankers.
Bravo, we took some tanks, but we got switched to trucks, so that kind of sucked. We were in aluminum and fiberglass trucks. They sent us in, turtleback Humvees. So we had to get used to that. So we spun up before we even got there. We had to spin up, and we had to retrain on this whole different type of tactics. And as soon as we got there, we still operated, and we were tankers, and we were going to be tankers even though we were in pop cans. I enjoyed it, that part, when we were Terminator, and I enjoyed being on the gun truck. It was fun. We were the two trucks, so we were always up front, and that's the way I liked it. So if anybody's gonna be there, I wanted it to be me.
Yeah, Hoekstra didn't get another IED in the mail again.
It never does.
Jeez. Have another stick of gum.
Come on, Hoekstra. Try some of my fuel ball.
Yeah, try to choke.
No, I'm a diabetic. Thank you. God bless you. Thanks, fellas.
Well, suit yourself then,
He never
Hoekstra.
wants it.
I really thought my new mustache was gonna cheer you up. I grew it just for you.
Yeah, he's gonna go cry in the porta-john.
Fellas. Hey, Trav.
Dear Travis, so I was wearing the bathing suit you got me the other day. You know, the one you like so much. I was wearing it walking around the pool. Then I went inside, I was wearing it in the bedroom. I was taking pictures of myself. I'm gonna send you the pictures. I can't wait for you to see the pictures.
Oh, I can't wait to see that one.
Well, hey, come on now, Hoekstra. I'm just gonna read my letter over here. Get away.
Sorry, Trav.
Nope, not for you there, Hoekstra.
Another day without an IED.
Roger, you just left. Yes, everyone takes the top and I'll take your own setup.
Being the first real contact, honestly, my first thought was, there's no music. You know, you get the war movies, everything starts to go to shit, things starts getting really, really, really crazy. Firefights going on, everyone's running around yelling. You always got that war music going in the background. It was eerily quiet, other than the sounds of gunfire and, you know, people breaking in and out of the radio, you know, coordinating movements around.
But I remember February 19th, 2004, that was the day that Staff Sergeant Boyer, he was on the Bravo 13 truck, and got a shot in the face. He got shot in the face by a Browning high-power pistol, and he was medevaced, so he was the first one out of us that got medevaced. That would probably be the first one that I remember being real.
We were actually out on a separate mission. We were actually in 113s, not even on tanks or in our Humvees. And we were doing dismounted missions, and we were on our way back, and one of the scout platoons had come into contact. So we moved to support them. Came over the bridge. There was still some firefight going on. I was actually inside the 113, so I wasn't in direct contact firing back. We made our turnaround. We had identified, or they had identified, where they believed that the fire was coming from, where the insurgents were at in fighting positions. So we were trying to maneuver around. We actually ended up on a canal, and we rolled the 113 upside down into the canal. Had to go into our full rollover procedures. And then after it settled, we had to get out of the 113 to continue on with our mission. And actually found several locals that had been wounded in the middle of the firefight as we walked up on one of the buildings.
I was always just a little bit leery. I was trying to believe what they wanted us to believe, and I did. I didn't have a problem with that, meaning, you know, that the people wanted us to be there, and I still believe that the greater majority of the people at that time wanted us to be there, and we had a lot of good interactions with a lot of the people. The only problem is they don't exactly wear uniforms, so therefore you can't tell who is the enemy and who is not. So, being said, you always have to take that stance, and that's what I did. I always remembered that my sidearm is strapped to my chest, so I'll just put it that way. So.
My first experience with a friendly casualty probably would have been, who was the first one? Probably Lister. He was in 2nd Platoon. You know, 2nd Platoon was pretty much on QRF, I believe, most of the time, and we rotated in and out with them when they were off. We got to know them pretty well, you know, from sitting around playing cards. You know, it was a little surreal for me because we weren't on site with them, but we were part of the reaction team that went out immediately after they drew contact.
We had news because the QRF had rolled out, Wolfpack had rolled out, which is the 2nd Platoon and Bravo Company. They were always tasked full-time with pretty much QRF. They were either on or they were off. They didn't normally run standard missions like we, the other platoons, ran. So we got news that they had all spun up and they had went out the door, and there was a IED, and so we were all ready to go for that. I was listening for what was going on, and then it's one of those deals where you just you're waiting around. There's a whole lot of commotion, and then they close the talk down, the CP down, so that way where we were listening to all the communications and the radio traffic and things like that, they just shut it down. So you can't get in. So we knew something had happened, and then First Sergeant just said, you know, we've got KIA, and that was pretty much all that was going on. That it wasn't until later that it was known that, you know, we'd lost Lister. Yep, so they were still out and trying to figure out what the best thing that we can do as the other platoon and I don't know, you know, it was just a call that was made, so we went and we got everything out of their platoon area. We removed bedding and all of the things like that of Lister's, so that way it could be taken care of. But then the last thing that the guys needed to come back to was seeing all of his stuff just as he had left it. So that was the call, and that's what we'd done. We just removed everything out of there.
And I really didn't know how to react, because you knew things could happen, and all of a sudden he just wasn't there. You know, and growing up, I didn't have a whole lot of friends that had died or passed away growing up, a few here and there. So you didn't really know how to deal with the death aspect of it. It was all of a sudden, you know, you're sitting there playing cards with him one day, and the next day, he's just not there anymore.
They hit an IED, it was a daisy chain, and then they pulled down a set number of, you know, however far they pulled down, and they ended up pulling up just next to, again, another IED. So when he dismounted and got about to the rear of the truck, that's when the last IED went off, and he was KIA. So they almost automatically started sending back KIA report. And so we figured out who it was and got that information sent up. And we sent out additional, we sent out the heavy traps, we sent out Terminator, and that's pretty much where that one went. There wasn't a whole lot to do. They got taken off, they got put on, it was all there, but I mean, they got taken off of duty, so that way they could deal with what they needed to and try to square themselves away, and then try to slowly get back into the groove of things eventually. But I was just outside outside the barracks when Sergeant Black was hit, and he was hit so close to base that, I mean, we all heard it and felt it, and we knew that they had just went out the gate not too long ago. So you're just hoping, you know, God, I hope it wasn't them. Hopefully they were past it, or hopefully they hadn't got to that point. But that's not the case. So they were the reason why the IED went off. So
the day that he was killed, when they got called out, we were actually playing cards, and he was my spades partner that day before I went back. And I remember the last thing he said is, "I'll be right back. Don't touch my cards. Don't look at my cards." And he rolled out. I didn't know him really well. I knew him well enough from being around again. You know, it was kind of a mix, because each platoon was like its own little family. And being new to the company, I hadn't been moved around through a lot of platoons, so I hadn't really got to know a lot of people outside of that. But he was one of those guys that was, you know, he was always there. You know, we got to chat a few times, and he was, you know, and I had questions about different things. And you know, he used to tell me, you know, you need anything, you know, let me know. And that one that happened, you know, that one was pretty tough for me too, because it was kind of like, okay, well, it's really getting real now. You know, I knew Lister enough to, you know, in passing, and that was tough. And as a group, it was tough to see how everybody reacted. And this is like, okay, I actually interacted with him a lot more on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, whereas now, again, he's just not there. And again, you get angry, you know, you want to go out, you want to kick people's ass. Who's responsible? But after that, it also kind of changed my outlook on life and death, and more of a, you know, it is what it is kind of a mentality. You know, I have a different outlook on death than a lot of people, specifically in the civilian world, of kind of, you know, it's your time to go, and it sucks. But I try to focus on the good stuff, the good memories. So after his death, it really kind of, I guess, changed my whole outlook on life and death.
On May 27th of 2004, it was during Operation Night Stalker, was what it was called. We were on the interstate, And we had been on the interstate for forever. I mean, it seemed like that was all we did for the majority of our tour for, I don't know how long we were caught, because we had to be within field of view from truck to truck all the way down, because the IEDs were getting so bad on the interstate, and we had basically neglected the rest of our sectors. Things had started to quiet down quite a bit. It was towards afternoon, and we were starting to finally get back out into our original sectors and going back and hitting places where we'd either had contact or we'd had munitions or things like that, or the people were giving us reports of things are just not good in this area. So we started to branch back out and actually starting to go back into combat operations.
With that second death, you know, then it became really real. It doesn't matter if you're on base or out, you know, outside the wire on a mission, that you really need to have your head on a swivel. You need to be looking around. I didn't necessarily trust the locals as much as you would think you would. You start to double, you know, guess everything that's going on around you. You know, they could be smiling and waving at you when you're driving by, and you're thinking, well, are they just doing that so we don't shoot them now? And as soon as we pass them, they're going to try to shoot us in our back. You know, you start driving down the road and you see, you know, buildings getting constructed or schools getting built, and you're thinking, are they putting bombs inside that wall? So it really made me very skeptical that anything good was going on, and it started to make you think that, listen, everybody here is out to kill us.
We started to head back to our position on the interstate, and we were clipping along. We were moving pretty fast. A truck had just passed us, and he was headed down the road a little ways, and between that truck and us, all of a sudden the road just blew up underneath us, and I instantly knew that we had hit an IED. My head flew back, dust just filled the cab. I thought, well, this is it. I was like, I'm gonna die. And then seemed like time, I mean, this is so quick, but it just seemed like time flashed, and I was like, crap, I didn't die. Now what? So then you start to figure out, what the hell am I gonna do now? So then I tried to pull myself back in. My driver did a good job. There's nothing with that, but when the tires went out on the Humvee, we had started to slide off of an embanked road. So after we had been hit by an IED, we went off of an embankment and the vehicle had rolled. I was able to get myself down onto the strap that I was sitting on, but I could only go down so far. And we had all rolled over, all of the sandbags and plates in the floor, people, ammunition, everything, just noise. I remember Sergeant Craig telling me to get off of him, and that was the last thing I really remember Sergeant Craig telling us. My biggest fear, and it wasn't really rational, but at that time the only thing I could think of is, they're coming for us, they're gonna get us, they're gonna get in the truck, so we have to get prepared, because they're gonna come and get, you know, swarm the truck. So first one to open the door is my lieutenant, so I was extremely relieved. And we got out, he starts pulling us out, the other trucks are pulling security, some of his crew has started help pulling guys out of the truck. And I just kept asking for my weapon. I need my weapon, where's my weapon? I couldn't find it. And then I got I don't even know whose, but we got a rifle, and I tried to bring it up to my shoulder because I was gonna shoot anything. I was just gonna shoot something. There was nothing. At that point in time, I was so mad I would have shot a dog. I couldn't even find one. There was nothing in the area. When I tried to bring my gun up, I noticed I couldn't. And I could feel the pain now in my arm, and I thought, well, I must be hit. But if I don't look at it, then I won't know how bad it is, and then I can just keep moving forward. And so Sergeant Kozilski, we got up to the truck, and I was in the, because we had the forward observer with us. He was, at that time, he had gotten to us. And so they sat me down in his truck, and one of the medics came up, and when they were working diligently on Sergeant Craig, they threw him in the back of the truck, and they took off. And that was a hell of a deal there, trying to get back. So I was sitting in the Humvee, and Sergeant Kazilski comes up and he goes, "You don't look so good, man." I was like, "I'm fine, Sergeant." He's like, "No, you're getting out of here." I said, "Okay." I started to get a little bit lightheaded. I was like, maybe he knows something I don't know. I still hadn't looked at my arm. I was like, I just don't want to know. So I could see I had hands and everything, but I didn't investigate too far. I didn't want to know. I was like, it's good. So they get me in the truck and we start rolling back, and we're headed out hot. The interpreter that we had with us was in the other loader seat on the opposite side of the truck. And so I go, "Here, take a picture of me." So that way, because I knew if something had happened and I died, I knew that my personal effects would make it back to my family. So I said, just take some pictures of me. And my mom is a sign language interpreter. So I just said, "I love you." And then that was pretty much that. Then another one of the forward observer guys in the truck, he starts to take my clothes off. I said, "Just don't cut the flag." He says, "What?" I said, "Just don't cut the flag." I said, "I want it to go back," because I want it to go back. So they cut everything around that they could and got it over my shoulder. And I said, "Well, how bad is it?" He goes, "No." And then, yeah. So then Sergeant Forshee just goes, "Drive faster." So we get finally rolling in there, and we're rolling hot. We roll all the way into the medical. And by the time I get in there, somebody come out and chewing our ass because we was driving too fast. And I remember, I was like, "Are you fucking serious? You're chewing me because we were driving too fast." And now I'm bleeding. They just pulled in other guys. They were like doing CPR basically in the truck on Sergeant Craig. And so, I was like, "No, not gonna deal with you."
One of the things that I remember, and my sister brings this up all the time, is when I got back and we had our welcome home ceremony, and I went out with my family that first weekend, or a couple days, whatever. We went out to dinner, and we went back to a hotel. We went out, I think we went out to Topeka, and next morning I was like, well, I want to get some things. I'm going to get my new barracks room pretty soon. There's a few things. I want to get TV and a couple other things. So we went to Walmart, and I remember walking in there and just looking up and looking around, and it was so bright. There was so much stuff in there. I hadn't seen that many things to buy in well over a year. And I remember just walking around. I don't think I really bought anything that first day. I wanted to buy everything. But I didn't know how to process it, because there's just people walking around everyday life, and it was kind of like, you have any idea where we just came from? Kind of an attitude of how can everybody just be walking around so normal when you know what's going on in Iraq? And garrison life was a culture shock for me too. There was a lot of people that were getting out of the military. There was a lot of people that were moving to other duty stations. After a 13-month deployment, there's a lot of personnel movement that moves around, and we got, new soldiers in, new NCOs in that hadn't been deployed, whether they were new to the military or not. And the whole idea of just getting up, going to PT, going to the motor pool, working, coming back, going to lunch, it was very surreal again of, it just didn't feel like the military that I knew.
One of the worst days that I remember is actually when I finally cleared and signed out and went on leave, and just leaving post for the last time, and it's like, never gonna put on the uniform again on a Monday morning, crisp and starch. It's just not gonna happen. I was like, so came home to where I was at with my wife, and she's my wife, but she wasn't at the time. So we were starting to, we were engaged, and we were starting that phase of the life. And so I was trying to be, excited and things like that. We were living in Lincoln at the time, and I was still having the same issues. When you're around everybody in the Army, everything's fine, because there's nothing wrong with us, because we are fine. We are all the same. It's when you get around other people that you're just like, no, something's not right. You're not like, no, I'm pretty sure it's not me, it's you that's all screwed up. And I'm like, I'm fine. And no. So, and my wife was going to school for drug and alcohol counselor. She even made her thesis on me. And so I was like, great. And so I went for more help. The VA was already in touch, and we started to look at that. And went to Omaha, and I wasn't really thrilled about what I was finding there. Like, well, that Lincoln's here. I was like, well, that's great. I'll go to Lincoln. So, and their PTSD, their mental health clinic was really good. I had positive influences and things through there, and a lot of help. The distance that I live now prohibits my coming back and forth so often. I just can't make it. I can't make it all the time, but we were actively engaged with them, and we talk a lot. They reevaluated me, and they thought, no, that's not right. So we'll add the rest of the stuff that isn't in your paperwork, and we'll get it squared away. And so they did. They got me squared away, and just dealing with the mental parts of it, they had pretty much helped the body, and for what they could. It was the same as everything. We'll do what we need to do for pain. We'll get you up where we need to, so that way you can function appropriately and sleep where you can. So it was never really anything horrific or horrifying. It was just, I was working in my sleep. I was always on patrol. I was in places that I knew. I was back in Iraq patrolling, and it was uneventful. It was sitting on the interstate or something like that. It wasn't horrible. It was just always working, always on patrol.
In a transition period, I like to tell everybody, I was fine. I was able to push everything behind me, but looking back now, I know that there was a good 4 or 5 years that I struggled a lot. I masked the going out and drinking to deal with the issues with I'm just 21, 22 and partying, because that's what we like to do. But I eventually, again, pushed through school, started working with a family company, ended up getting my master's degree, my MBA, my first master's degree, my MBA, and getting into, the corporate sales world, and now I'm working on my second master's degree. I think the most important thing for both getting out of the military and getting out of the military shortly after a deployment like we had was the family structure. Not everybody I know is as fortunate as I am to be able to be in that position of, okay, you guys just got back, now you're out of the military, what are you going to do with your life? Well, I was able to come home. I was able to have the family that could bring me in and support me enough to allow me to figure out which way I wanted to go with my life. So I'm real fortunate in that. So me and Will were like two peas in a pod. First day I got brought into Alpha Company, I got walked down there and introduced to him, and he was a little motherfucker. He got right off the tank, his little short ass looked me square in the eyes and goes, "Who is this piece of shit, and why are you giving him to me?" And we were best friends ever since that day. We spent all of our time together before we went to Iraq, all of our time together as a tank crew for, the first majority of the time I was in Iraq. And even when we got back, we spent most of our time together. He met his wife through me here in Chicago. He came back and visited. He got into a real bad car accident at one point and stayed in my parents' house. Thankfully, I understood how the military needed to track where he was at, so I could call staff duty every morning and let them know that he was alive and present. And they knew me, so they would take my word for it. And when he passed away, that probably has hit me harder than anybody else that has passed away in my life across the board. Outside of a high school friend of mine that was murdered between the two of those. But, you know, we went through so much together in that first, you know, part of the deployment that even when I first got out and I was having the tough days and I just needed to talk to somebody, I could call him. And I think that's the one cool thing about the group of people as we came back is we all are here. And that's something important to remember is Babcock was my guy. If I was having a tough day or he was having a tough day, we could call each other because we were there together, we got it. Even if it had nothing to do about what happened overseas, it was just bullshit inside. There's always that sense of comfort of knowing that, well, he's got my back no matter what. I deployed with, you know, I moved around a lot in the small amount of time that I was in there in that unit, but, you know, Sergeant Dunham, who met his wife through me as well, is here in Chicago. You know, and we probably don't see each other as much as we want to, but again, he also has 5 kids, so he has his own little basketball team over there that's always busy. And I still, Abel, who was my roommate at Fort Riley before we deployed, we don't get to see each other, but we talk. And, you know, whether it's on Facebook, I probably haven't talked to him on the phone in years. But anytime you run into anybody from 134, even people that you only had minimal reaction to, you know, you guys get talking again, and there's that instant, yeah, we were there together. Yeah, we're brothers, you know. And there's no real way to explain it, I guess, at least from my point of view, other than the fact that nobody will ever understand what we went through together. We all, and even in our battalion, we all have our own small groups that experienced a lot of different stuff together. And it's just hard to describe because it's one of those bonds that just kind of builds up and you become dependent. Your life becomes dependent on your battle buddies not fucking up and watching your back, and their life is dependent on me not fucking up and me watching their back. And there's a certain level of respect you gain over time, whether you want to or not, of knowing that, I mean, you're placing each other's lives in your hands. You know, the mission is the mission, but at the end of the day, you know, your group of people you're with, that's who it's about.
If suicide is an option for you, if you actually think that suicide is your only answer, I would implore you to look for somebody. The fraternal organizations, we are out there, we are looking, we are actively searching to be with you. We want to help because we've been through this. I'm a commander of the American Legion. I mean, we are out there, even in small communities. There's only 91 people in my town. We are out there. We are looking for you. Please, it is not an option. We just don't want to leave anybody falling and behind. So we are there for you. So, but please let us know. We will come and look for you. We want you with us. So we just want you to be with us. And you can't do that if you've taken another option. That's just not an option.
It was great to visit these 2 men. I was uplifted after my visit about how time and support have successfully transitioned these 2. One has found support through family structure, and the other has found purpose through civil service. You see, when a veteran separates from service, there are so many examples of how to readjust, how to find new purpose, but everyone must find their own. If it feels abstract, it's because it is. It's so different, I understand, but you belong. You do. I promise you do. Your family and community want your leadership and values and will depend on your experiences. They need it so they can grow, so we can all grow. And each one of us needs to become transcendent, repurposed. We have sacrificed physically and spiritually. We also provide security to nations of all cultures and people. So why is it so difficult to readjust back home? Look, we may not all agree if war is justified or diplomatic. We all volunteer to take part. and what is agreed by the majority. And that has left many of us disconnected and divided. So now more than ever, we need to consolidate. The same young men and women who are willing to take part in war on terror now have a terror of their own. Veteran suicide is at an all-time high, and we have to say enough is enough.
Coming out? Yeah. That's awesome. Don't get no mixed drinks here.
All right, here you go, gentlemen. There's we got today's special. We got soup.
You were just telling me how you do anything when you make
We do anything. I can put it all. Soup today is.
You got crackers with that soup?
I got 3 crackers with me right now.
You guys want advice? It's not Friday.
This has been a Fat Ham production.
That's the end of the show.
Yeah, but here's the thing though.